Thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Gnostic Studies. And this evening we'd like to continue our series on Gnostic Tarot and Kabbalah. Tarot and Kabbalah in the Gnostic tradition. We're going to continue with our summary of the previous class before we do today's class. So the previous class was on Arcanum 17. And we'll leave the link in the comments area. All right, so the different names for the card are the Moon, Twilight, as well as Night. We discussed the meaning of it in the previous class, but just to summarize, it's related with what are called hidden or occult enemies. The Black Lodge, the Abyss, temptation, demons. The dangers of initiation. Oh, wait, you know what? This is the class we're studying today. Hold on. Let me get the one for the previous class. Here we go. Pardon my error. Previous class was Arcanum 17. The names are the Star or Stars and Hope. The transcendental axiom: some men beg for signs in order to believe, and others beg for wisdom so as to act. But the hopeful heart has everything in its hopes. In the waters of life, we have two triangles, the positive and the negative. In the middle section is a woman who's watering the earth with two elixirs, masculine and feminine. Upon her head is a lotus flower, indicating her developed chakras. In the superior part, we have the 8-pointed star of Venus, symbolizing that after the initiations of fire come those of light. And what we want to cover is the related explanation, what we want to highlight. That is from our friend Eliphas Levi, a Frenchman. So we're going to read that next. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, you can always leave them in the comments area. The 17th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Pe, represents the complete life, or the ancient understanding of nature. Its synthesis is the brilliant star, or the intelligent understanding of nature. Its synthesis is the brilliant star, or the intelligent understanding of nature. Nowadays, most people no longer comprehend the universal harmonies of nature, nor do they understand the necessary interconnectedness of all the effects with all the causes. The allegorical image of Pe is a magnificent and gracious emblem, which is analogous to many Hermetic symbols. It is a naked woman who represents simultaneously truth, nature, and wisdom without a veil. She turns two urns or vases, one of gold and another of silver, towards the earth, and pours out the sap of universal life, fire and water. Above her head shines a star of 8 points, that of Venus, symbol of peace and love. True astrology is one of the branches of the Holy Kabbalah. The first constellations marked out by the shepherds of Chaldea were also the first characters of Kabbalistic writing. It is said that astrology was profaned with the degeneration of the Greeks and the Romans. You can see over here on the right an attempt to show the connection of the stars with a Hebrew letter. The doctrine of the seven heavens and the three mobiles emanating primitively from the 10 Sephiroth. The character of the planets governed by angels whose names have been changed into the divinities of paganism, and the influence of the spheres upon one another. The fatality attached to numbers, and the scale of proportion between the celestial hierarchies corresponding to the human hierarchies, etc. All of this has been materialized and rendered superstitious by fanatical people and those who draw horoscopes. That's the end of the related explanation. The rest of the handout has explanation of how to do a meditation and a prayer in order to connect with the heart temple of any planet or sun, that is star. And then, as always, we have the different cards at the bottom with their different symbolism, some better than others. All right, well, we'll stop now and jump into today's class, which will be Arcanum 18. And I'll put that link in the description, or in the, what's it called? Comment area. If you want to follow along. So today we're studying Arcanum 18, related with occult enemies, as we mentioned already. You can see here the different symbols associated with the card, and the letter, the number 18. Arcanum number 18. Arcanum number 18, the Kabbalistic synthesis of Arcanum 18 is 1 plus 8 equals 9, the ninth sphere, sex. If we add 9 plus 9 together, we get 18. In it, there is a balance. 1 9 is the positive aspect, and the other is the negative aspect. But in itself, 18 is negative, harmful, secret enemies of the Arcanum of the Twilight. In the work of the ninth sphere, one must struggle a great deal, because one must learn to sublimate the sexual energy. Here is the code, or key, to all empires. In Arcanum 18, we discover the dangers of initiation, the hidden and secret enemies who propose to damage our initiation. This is the subterranean struggle for the dominion of the ninth sphere. In Arcanum 18, we have to fight bloody battles against the tenebrous ones, the Black Lodge, the Abyss, temptation, demons, who do not want the initiate to escape from their claws. This is the path of the razor's edge. This is the path which is filled with dangers both within and without, as the Venerable Master Sivananda says. In the internal worlds, the tenebrous of Arcanum 18 violently assault the student. In the terrible Arcanum 18, we find the witchcraft of Thessaly. Here are found the potions of Canidia, erotic magical ceremonies, rites to make one fall in love, dangerous philters, etc. We must warn the Gnostic student that the most dangerous potion which the tenebrous use to take the student from the path of the razor's edge is the intellect. The Hebrew letter is Tzaddik. It is the 9th hour of Apollonius. Here, nothing has yet finished. The initiate augments their perception to even exceed the limits of the solar system, beyond the zodiac. They reach the threshold of the infinite. They reach the limits of the intelligible world, and the divine light is revealed. And with it appear new fears and dangers. Study about the minor mysteries, the 9 arcades through which the student must rise. In the transcendental axiom, may the granary of your charity be inexhaustible, and your patience no less inexhaustible than your charity. All right, reading from Manual of Practical Magic, our first book today. It's Twilight, or Tzadi. The Evil Eye is the subtitle. The evil eye in children is cured by reading to them a fragment of each of the 4 Gospels and making the sign of the cross on their forehead, mouth, and chest. The evil eye is also cured by reciting the conjuration of the 4 and making passes over the head to take out the morbid fluid that can be burnt in fire. The children who have the evil eye have big shadows under their eyes, fever in the head, vomiting, and even diarrhea. The evil eye is due to the hypnotic force of some evil persons who look at children. Doctors do not know anything about these things and almost always confuse this illness with stomach infections. The eyes are the windows of the soul. The man who lets himself be caught by the eyes of all women, and vice versa, will have to resign themselves to living in the abyss. There are women who perform witchcraft on men, and vice versa. These victims should defend themselves incessantly with the conjurations of the 4 and of the 7. To achieve initiation, we have to steal the fire from the devil, right? Remember Arcanum 15. To achieve initiation, it is up to us to wage great battles against the Black Lodge. We can defend ourselves from witchcraft, invoking our own elemental intercessor. The elemental intercessor knows about herbs, he knows about illumination, he knows about stars, because he is an expert in the elemental magic of nature. He is called upon wholeheartedly when going to bed. And the explanation related with how to invoke our elemental intercessor to make a magical circle of protection around ourselves is given in another book called Occult Medicine and Practical Magic. Sometimes it's translated as Esoteric Medicine and Practical Magic. But the excerpt here that we have summarizes what we need to understand in this regard. When you trace around yourself the magic circle, whether it is with your sword or with your willpower and imagination united in vibrant harmony, or with both at the same time, you must pronounce the following mantrams: Elion, Melion, Tetragrammaton. So you visualize a circle being drawn around you, and we ask our elemental intercessor to draw the circle of protection, to make a circle of protection around us so that we can be protected. And then as we visualize the elemental intercessor drawing that circle, we can use these mantras. We should use these mantras: Elion, Melion, Tetragrammaton. Elion, Melion, Tetragrammaton. Elion, Melion, Tetragrammaton. And then this next sentence is also very useful. The magician defends themselves against attacks with the magic circle and with the esoteric pentagram. It's very useful to have an upright pentagram in our room, in our house, in our home, in the multiple places in the home, but certainly in the bedroom as well. Now moving on to our second reading from Esoteric Course of Kabbalah. Now let us study the 18th Arcanum of the Kabbalah. This is the Arcanum of Twilight. It becomes necessary for our Gnostic disciples to profoundly reflect on the esoteric content of this Arcanum. We have been strongly criticized for not continuing with the already known Hebraic monotony. Certainly, we do not want to follow that same monotony. We are only interested in what is called comprehension. We want our students to comprehend each Arcanum and thereafter develop it within themselves. First, we want our disciples to discover each Arcanum within themselves and then within all of nature. Arcanum 18 is light and shadow, white magic and black magic. On the 18th card appear a dog and a wolf howling at the moon. We can also see in that illustration two pyramids. One is white, the other is black. In this Arcanum, the symbol of the crab or scorpion is not missing. In Arcanum 18, the number 9 is found 2 times. 9 plus 9 equals 18. In this Arcanum, the 9th sphere is repeated twice. We already know that the number 1 is positive and that the number 2 is negative. So if we repeat the 9th sphere for the first time and for the second time, we will have sex in its 2 aspects, positive and negative. Now our disciples will understand why Arcanum 18 is light and darkness, white magic and black magic. The secret enemies of initiation are found in Arcanum 18. You must know, beloved disciples, that the Kundalini rises very slowly through the medullary canal. The ascension of the Kundalini from vertebra to vertebra is performed very slowly according to the merits of the heart. Each vertebra represents certain virtues. The ascension to a certain vertebra is never acquired without having achieved the conditions of sanctity that are required for such a vertebra. Those who believe that once the Kundalini is awakened, it instantaneously rises to the head in order to leave us totally illuminated are really ignorant people. In Arcanum 18, we have to endure bloody battles against the tenebrous ones. The kingdom of heaven suffereth violence. The violent take it by force. See Matthew chapter 11, verse 12. In the internal worlds, the tenebrous ones of Arcanum 18 violently assault the student. The devotee must endure terrible battles against the tenebrous. The conquest of each vertebra in the dorsal spine signifies struggles to the death against the adepts of the shadow. Fortunately, those who work with the Kundalini receive the flaming sword, and they defend themselves with it. Sometimes the student, too weary yet still holding the sword in their hands, achieves the entrance into the temple. Terrible are the efforts that the tenebrous ones exert in order to take the student from the path of the razor's edge. This path is full of dangers from within and from without. Many are those who begin, yet few are those who finish. The great majority of aspirants are deviated by the black path. In Arcanum 18, there are very subtle dangers that the student ignores. The Tenebrous gather in their temples in order to count the number of vertebrae conquered by the student. Each vertebra symbolizes a cup for them. On the altar, they place the same number of cups as the number of vertebra the student has conquered. They judge the neophyte on this basis and consider him a thief. The Tenebrous one's thoughts may be formulated as follows. You have stolen cups from us. You are stealing powers from us. You are a thief. The Tenebrous never believe themselves to be bad. They believe themselves to be wells of sanctity. Therefore, when they attack the student, they do it in good faith. They believe that the student is a thief of powers. That is all. Indeed, the abyss is filled with sincerely mistaken people, and these are people with very good intentions. The number 9 is positive and negative at the same time. Now we explain the mystery of Arcanum 18. In this terrible Arcanum, we find all the potions and all the witchcraft of Thessaly. Here is the kitchen of Conidia. We can read in the epics of Horatio how this horrible witch of Rome made all of her potions. The books of grimoires are full of tenebrous recipes which are obviously related to Arcanum 18. Erotic magical ceremonies, rites in order to be loved, dangerous potions, etc., etc. All of this is Arcanum 18. We must warn the Gnostic student that the most dangerous potion that the Tenebrous use in order to take the student off the path of the razor's edge is the intellect. Bluntly, we warn our disciples that out of 2 million people living in this world, only a small handful of souls, which we could count on our fingers, will be worthy of the angelic state. The rest, the great majority, is a lost harvest, who will sink into the abyss forever. To be an angel is very difficult. Neither time nor the mechanical evolution of nature can ever convert a human being into an angel. This is a sexual problem. Adam Christ. It is necessary for the Buddha to be born within us. Then we can incarnate the Christ. When man has engendered all of his internal vehicles, then he incarnates his Buddha and becomes a Buddha. We warn our students that the soul is not Christ. Many Buddhas exist in Asia that still have not incarnated the Christ. Remember, beloved disciples, that beyond the Buddha is the resplendent dragon of wisdom, the internal Christ of every human being who comes to this world. When the resplendent dragon of wisdom enters into the soul, then it is transformed into the soul, and the soul is transformed into it. The outcome of this divine and human mixture is that which is called the Adam Christ, the Son of Man. The Christ I. It is necessary that our Gnostic disciples comprehend that the resplendent dragon of wisdom, the internal Christ of every human being who comes to this world, has no individuality. The latter is the product of the I, and the Christ is not any kind of I. Thus, it is absurd to talk about the Christ I. When indeed, the internal Christ does not have any kind of I. The dragon of wisdom transcends any kind of I, beyond any individuality. The adorable one is absolutely infinite and impersonal. The internal bodies. Really, the human being does not yet possess their internal bodies. The actual astral, mental, and causal vehicles that human beings use are nothing more than mental forms that we need to disintegrate. Those mental forms constitute the human specter within which the I or ego lives. It is necessary for us to engender the internal vehicles in order to incarnate the Buddha and thereafter the Christ. This is an absolutely sexual problem. Renowned incarnations. The living Buddhas are renowned incarnations. Those are the unique cases in which the universal spirit of life incarnates and reincarnates. In other cases, only values reincorporate. In other words, the I, the ego, Satan. Really, Satan, the ego, only reincorporates in order to satisfy its desires, and that is all. The only reincarnations worthy of admiration are the living incarnations. The ninth sphere, in its positive aspect, brings living Buddhas into the world. Yet, in its negative aspect, it only brings memories, egos, and specters of personalities that were physically alive but have died. This is the fatal wheel. Now you will understand the whole drama of Arcanum 18. Positive 9 plus negative 9 is equal to 18. The embryo of soul. The soul's embryo lives within the spectre and reincorporates with the spectre and with the I. It is necessary to comprehend that within every spectre lives an I, an ego, and an embryo of soul. We have spoken about this in former lessons, yet it seems that many students have not yet understood it. Let's clarify that the embryo of soul, which every human being has within, is not the Christ, because the Christ has not incarnated within the present human beings yet. Only those who have reached the Gnostic initiation incarnate the Christ. No one could reach such initiation without having previously incarnated their Buddha of perfection. So that's the end of our second reading, chapter 18 of Esoteric Course of Kabbalah. Again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comments area. All right, with our third reading here, chapter 18 of Initiatic Path and the Arcana of Tarot and Kabbalah. Description of the Arcanum. Twilight. In the waters of life, there is a scorpion within an inverted triangle, signifying that by spilling the vessel of Hermes, we, like a scorpion, kill the Divine Mother. In the middle are two pyramids, one white and one black, symbolizing the positive and the negative. Two dogs or wolves, one black and the other white, howl at the moon. The white one is positive and symbolizes friendship, while the black is negative and symbolizes the psychological I, the ego. They represent the terrible struggle between the tenebrous forces. The moon in itself represents sex. We have to work with the moon to convert it into the sun. The dog also represents the sexual instinct. And it is due to this that the dog takes us to the very to the very doors of the Absolute. It's very interesting. The dog also represents the sexual instinct, and it is due to this that the dog takes us to the very doors of the Absolute. Esoteric significance of Arcanum 18. It is necessary to study, analyze, and reflect profoundly on the esoteric content of this Arcanum. Arcanum 18 is light and shadow, white magic and black magic. This is found represented by the black dog and the white dog, as well as the black pyramid and the white pyramid. By Kabbalistically adding Arcanum 18 together, we find 1 plus 8 equals 9, the ninth sphere, sex. We have already said that within our planetary organism, there are 9 interior strata. These are the 9 vaults of occult masonry. The 9th corresponds to the nucleus of the planetary organism, and there is the sepulchre of Hiram Abiff, or Chiram Osiris, who is the intimate Christ of every one, of each person who comes to this world. It is erroneous to consider or believe that the Christ is only Jeshua ben Pandira, which is the name of Jesus the Christ, who is undeniably the living incarnation of the Verb, the Logos. All of us need to resurrect that intimate Christ, and to achieve this, it is obvious that we must descend to the 9th sphere, sex. Due to this, it is said that Hiram Abiff is in the 9th circle, in the 9th vault. This is a diagram from a Masonic text here. And you can see it's got its arcades or vaults, and then what appears to be a kind of an altar at the bottom and the center. We are all children of sex, and for this reason, in the Divine Comedy, we see the condemned in the 9th sphere with water up to their generative organs, and weeping with tears which congeal in their eyes. This is because it is a valley of tears and afflictions. That the waters reach their generative organs is due to the fact that they are spermatic waters. We are all born and die weeping. If we add 9 plus 9, we get 18. The number 9 is contained twice in Arcanum 18. Between them, there is a balance. One 9 is the positive aspect, and the other 9 is the negative aspect. But in itself, the 18 is negative, disastrous. It is the secret enemies of the Arcanum of Twilight. In the work in the 9th sphere, one has to struggle a lot, because one has to learn to sublimate the sexual energy. This is the key or solution to all empires. In Arcanum 18, the 9th sphere is repeated twice. We already know that the number 1 is positive and that the number 2 is negative. In the same manner, if we repeat the 9th sphere once and for a second time, then we will have sex in its 2 aspects, positive and negative. Now you understand why Arcanum 18 is light and darkness, white magic and black magic. In Arcanum 18, we find the secret enemies of initiation. Now we're going to study the symbolism of the dog. The dog participates in magic. It is a generous animal which, in ancient times, was always consecrated to the god Mercury. The dog of Mercury is strictly symbolic, as it clearly allegorizes the sexual power. The high honor which the old hierophants of ancient Egypt awarded to the dog is quite obvious. The sexual fire, the dog, the erotic instinct, is that extraordinary and marvelous agent which can radically transform us. The dog Cerberus is in the infernal worlds, and we must extract him, steal him from the infernos. This means to liberate the sexual force. To take Cerberus from the dwelling of Pluto is urgent. Cerberus, with his barking, his 3 enormous blunt heads, and his collar entwined with serpents, is a prodigy of terror. He lives happily there, barking at the dead and filling them with terror. The dog and the swan, who flies above the waters of life, signify the same as the dove, which is the same as the Egyptian ibis. The force of the Holy Spirit, the sexual force. In all, it is the vessel of Hermes, which must be raised well on high. In the archaic doctrine, in occult wisdom, the guide dog who leads the knight to the sanctum regnum is spoken of. There are times when the knight forgets the dog and believes that he can continue on the path without him, and yet this is not so. Sooner or later, when the night feels stagnant, there remains no other remedy but to take hold of the dog. When we are at a standstill, it is the dog who shows us the path. We must take him from the abyss. One must not forget that the three-headed Cerberus pulls at his master's lead, taking him securely to escape on the path which leads to final liberation. Hercules took him from the abyss in order to serve as a guide, and we do the same when we attain chastity. By working in the forge of the Cyclops, practicing sexual magic, transmuting our creative energies, we advance upon the path of the razor's edge until we reach liberation. Woe to the knight who abandons his dog. He will lose his way and fall into the abyss of perdition. Unfortunately, the intellectual animal, mistakenly called man, or human being, has not attained chastity. That is to say, they have not taken Cerberus from the dominion of the infernos. This will now explain to you the reason why the defunct suffer in the Plutonian abysses when they hear Cerberus barking, the hound with 3 hungry jaws. We must never forget that Cerberus, the guard dog of the infernos, was affectionate to those who entered and mercilessly devoured those who tried to leave. The lost obviously suffer the insatiable thirst of lust in terrifying Tartarus. In Arcanum 18, we have to unleash bloody battles against the Tenebris. Heaven is taken by force or by assault. The valiant have taken it. Again, that's Matthew chapter 11, verse 12. We have to look at the different versions of that, or at the original, the different versions of the translations of that verse, or the original Greek that it's translated from, or even the Aramaic. In the internal worlds, the Tenebris of Arcanum 18 violently attack the student. This path is filled with dangers, both within and without. Many are those who begin, few are those who arrive. The majority stray on the black path. In Arcanum 18, there are very subtle dangers which the student ignores. The number 9 is positive and negative at the same time. This is the mystery of Arcanum 18. In this terrible arcanum, we find all the potions and witchcraft of Thessalia. The books of grimoires are full of tenebrous recipes, very appropriate for Arcanum 18. Erotic magical ceremonies, rites in order to be loved, dangerous potions, etc., etc., etc. All this is Arcanum 18. We must warn students that the most dangerous potion which the Tenebris use to take the student from the path of the razor's edge is that of the intellect. To invite us to ejaculate the seminal liquor, to invite us to orgasm, or to lead us astray by making us consider schools, theories, sects, etc., etc. We must not forget that they who are misled adore the great beast and say, "There is nothing greater than the beast. Who could be superior to the beast?" That's from chapter 13 of the book of Revelations. Here is wisdom. Let him who hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of man, the number of a man, and the number is 666. That's Revelations 13, chapter 18. The mark of the beast is the 2 horns on the forehead. Millions and millions of human beings already have the mark of the beast upon their brow and upon their hands. Almost all the human populace of this valley of tears already have the mark of the beast upon the forehead and upon the hands. All those souls were lost, and since 1950 have been entering the abyss. Human evolution completely failed. The number of the great beast is 666. This is the number of man, because the number reduces Kabbalistically thus: 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals 18. Adding the total together, we have the following: 1 plus 8 equals 9. That is sex. 9 is man, because man is the son of sex. In total, contained within 666 are Arcanum 18 and Arcanum 9. Arcanum 18 is the abyss, darkness, sexual temptations, against which the initiate must fight. Arcanum 9 is the ninth sphere, initiation. The gods judged the great whore whose number is 666, and the sentence of the gods was, to the abyss, to the abyss, to the abyss. All right, that's the end of the first chapter in Initiatic Path in the Arcana of Tarot and Kabbalah. And now we'll read the second chapter, which is, chapter 40. Initiatic significance of Arcanum 18. Excuse me. Arcanum 18 added Kabbalistically, 1 plus 8 equals 9, the ninth sphere, sex. Esoteric traditions affirm that the earth has 9 strata or subterranean regions. Clearly, in the ninth stratum is that which we could call the planetary nucleus, which is of an extraordinary density. The Kabbalists say that the sign of the infinite is in the center of the earth. It is obvious that within the heart of the earth, its vital energies circulate. It is for this reason that the Kabbalists affirm that in the center of the earth one finds the brain, heart, and sex of the genie of the earth. That is to say, the planetary genie. The organization of all creatures is constructed upon that same model. That is to say, it is also within us. The struggle is terrible. Brain against sex, sex against brain, and that which is worst of all, heart against heart. The pentagram with the apex pointing upwards is the human being. If sex wins the battle, then the pentagram is inverted, with the apex pointing downwards, bringing about the downfall of the fulminated tower of Arcanum 16. In sex exists the greatest force which can liberate or enslave us. The descent to the ninth sphere was, from ancient times, the greatest test of the supreme dignity of the Hierophant. All of the treatises speak of the descent of Aeneas into the ninth sphere, to the Tartarus of the Greeks, in Book 4 of the Aeneid. The Sibyl of Cumaea warned him about the descent into the Avernus. Sprung from the blood of gods, the Trojan Anchises' son, easy is the road down to Avernus. Day and night the door of this black night is open, but thy steps back to retrace the aura of the earth. This is the task. This is the difficult task. Few have, and from the lineage of the gods, few have favored and loved Jupiter, or borne by their own glowing virtue to the heavens, attained it. The Kabbalists speak of Adam Protoplasmos, who, through the transmutation of the creative energies, becomes something distinct, different. The Kabbalistic traditions tell us that Adam had 2 wives, Lilith and Nahimah. The first, it is said, is the mother of abortions, homosexuality, of sexual degeneration. And the second is the mother of adultery, fornication, etc. Lilith and Nahima are two aspects of infrasexuality. Those two women correspond to the submerged mineral infradimensional spheres within the very interior of the planet Earth. In any case, the Greek Tartarus and the Avernus are symbols for the submerged mineral kingdom. Life exists in everything. We live in the element of air, and yet this element is invisible to us, just as for fish, water is invisible. I can assure you that there is life in the rock, that living beings exist there, and that elemental is invisible to them. That element is invisible to them, the rock. They are not beings of flesh and blood. They are subtle, lost, degenerated elements who are in the form of involution. Aeneas met his father and the beautiful Helen. Dante in his Divine Comedy met with multitudes of beings. The 9 circles of Dante have a relationship with the 9th sphere in the submerged mineral element. It becomes necessary to descend to our own atomic infernos in order to work with the fire and the water, origin of worlds, beasts, and human beings. In all of the pseudo-occultist schools, they talk of arising, ascending to the superior worlds, but it occurs to no one to descend. And the serious thing is that for every exaltation, there is a corresponding humiliation. In the submerged sphere of Lilith, we find those who prefer abortions and people who use the contraceptive pill, who do not want to have children, and the result is obvious. In the sphere of Nahima, we find those who are fascinated by sex, men who are terrible fornicators, women who are given to adultery, pride, vanity, who divorce and marry again. Kabbalistic traditions say that when a man abandons his wife to marry another, his forehead remains marked with a Luciferic mark. The Kabbalists affirm that when a woman marries a man who does not belong to her, on the day of the wedding she appears bald-headed, and she unconsciously covers her head too much. Without transmutation, no one can self-realize. As we've mentioned, the 9th sphere is repeated twice in Arcanum 18, and this leaves us with a lot to think about. The first 9 is positive, and the second 9 is negative. Thus, Arcanum 18 shows the fatal or negative aspect of the 9th sphere. This aspect is in the spheres of Lilith and Nahima. It is obvious that the infernal worlds are infrasexual. It is evident that infrasexuality reigns supreme amongst humanity, some being in the sphere of Lilith and others that of Nahima. When one intends to work in the 9th sphere, one is immediately attacked by the red demons of Seth. They work to deviate us from the path of the razor's edge. It is clear that within the magisterium of fire, there exist many dangers, both within and without. When the igneous or kundalini serpent ascends via the spinal column, the advance is slow. It is realized very slowly, vertebra by vertebra. Each vertebra represents determined virtues corresponding to an esoteric degree. One never achieves the ascent in a particular vertebra without having first fulfilled the conditions of sanctity required for that vertebra. The 33 vertebrae correspond to the 33 degrees of occult masonry, the 33 degrees of the Master Mason, as well as to the 33 degrees of the life of Jesus. And for each vertebra there is a corresponding ordeal. and the ascent is realized in accordance with the merits of the heart. Those who believe that the Kundalini, once awakened, rises instantaneously to the head so that we will be totally illuminated are really ignorant people. The sacred fire has 7 degrees of power. These must be developed in order to be able to self-realize. In this present reincarnation, when I was struggling for the fire's 4th degree of power and had still not dissolved the ego, I saw on the screen of a cinema the image of an erotic couple. That night, in the world of the mind, I was submitted to a test in which the couple upon the screen repeated the same scene. The aforementioned scene was reproduced by my mind and seemed to have life, movement. Then I exited from the test. When I left the world of the mind, passing on to the astral world, I was harshly recriminated, and I was warned that if I returned to those places, the cinemas, I would lose the sword, that it would be better if I were to study my past lives in the Akashic records. The atmosphere in the cinemas is tenebrous. There are millions of larvae created by the minds of those who go there, and then later come nocturnal pollutions. This is Arcanum 18. It is darkness. The Divine Comedy speaks of the dog Cerberus, which is sex, and which must be taken from the Tartarus to the sun, S-U-N. This is the ascension of the sexual forces in us, which one must cause to rise and use to eliminate the I or ego within. This is fundamental for the intimate self-realization of the being. This is a struggle between light and darkness in Arcanum 18. This terrible struggle is affirmed in the 3 tantric schools, which are dedicated to sex. White Tantrism, connection of the lingam yoni without orgasm, without ejaculation of the Ain't Seminis. This brings about the ascent of the Kundalini in us and self-realization. We also have Black Tantrism. During the Maithuna, there is the orgasm, ejaculation of the Ain't Seminis, so as to develop the Kundartiguador, or Kundabuffer organ. And the 3rd tantric school is called Gray Tantrism, to work at times with the orgasm and other times without it, working solely for the enjoyment of sexual pleasure, but with the imminent danger of falling into Black Tantrism. So upon realizing Arcanum 18, we find ourselves before the dilemma of to be or not to be. No one can self-realize without the practice of the Maithuna. One must awaken consciousness because without it one abandons the path, since one does not have seriousness. Previously, the secret of the Arcanum AZF was not given to anyone who had not awakened consciousness first in order that they should not abandon the path. Synthesis of Arcanum 18. Whosoever defeats Satan in sex defeats him in all aspects. To liberate the dog Cerberus means to liberate the sexual energy, to use it in a transcendental way. The eyes are the windows of the soul. The man who allows himself to catch the eye of all women will have to resign himself to living in the abyss, and vice versa. There are women who work witchcraft on men. Those victims should defend themselves incessantly with the conjuration of the 4 and the conjuration of the 7. We can defend ourselves from witchcraft by invoking our elemental intercessor. We call upon him wholeheartedly when going to bed. We mentioned that before, mantrams Elion, Melion, Tetragrammaton. So that's the end of the material that we wanted to share with you today. We want to open it up for questions and comments. If you have any, please feel free to drop them into the comments area. We got a question. What do I do when intimacy is very built up and some other things? We need to speak to a rabbi, please. So I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to, but it sounds like what you're talking about is when the energy starts to build up. And that's why we need to transmute the energy every day using our pranayama or hamsa, lamaseria exercises, runic exercises, vocalization. Those type of things will help to transmute the energy. We cannot let the creative energy just sit there. We need to convert it into something else, to give it a job, a task, an action, a doing. And that's what we do when we transmute the energy. When we vocalize, we assist with the corresponding chakra that corresponds to the sound. We can also help strengthen our physical body by doing exercises, such as the ancient exercises, Tibetan like lamaseria exercise, sometimes called Tibetan rites. There's others, the runic exercises, Tai Chi, Qigong are pretty good too. So that's what we recommend. We do not recommend just holding the energy without transmuting it, because it's just going to lead to more problems. If you have any other questions or comments, please feel free to leave them. We want to invite you to meditation tomorrow night as well at the same time, or it's night for us, may not be night for you, depending on where you're listening from. But the same time tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a meditation. Doesn't look like there's any more questions or comments right now, so we'll stop there. But again, thank you guys for listening, for your participation, with your attention, being present with us, considering this information. We hope it benefits you. Obviously, we're sharing it because it's benefited us, and we want it to be accessible to others. So we want to thank you, and we want to wish you the best on your esoteric path. And if we don't talk to you tomorrow, then hopefully next week you can join us for the next class.